Okay, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today I want to talk through 5 years of lessons that I've had from training hikers for 5 years. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you would know that, I often talk about sort of my coaching life. And, I've been coaching in one way, shape, or form since I was probably about 15 years old. So that's been quite a few years now. And essentially, when I got into actually coaching hikers, so hikers, trekkers, backpackers, mountaineers, that was about 5 years ago, where my sort of, worlds collided in regards to, hiking was always a big passion of mine, something I always enjoyed doing, but it was never something I really considered professionally. And then my actual professional career as a coach, when they kind of collided when I first started training hikers, a particular gym I got a job at. And over that time, I've learned many, many, many things, as we all do over a period of 5 years of career growth. And over that time, I've learned many, many, many different things in the world of training for hiking. And I thought it would be really interesting to kind of look back on probably the big lesson I had from each of those years to sort of talk you through sort of how my ideas around, I guess, training for hikers has sort of developed, have changed, have transformed, and how sort of, where we sort of landed on where we are today in the way that I present my information for hikers, the things that I aim for with their training. So yeah, I thought this would be an interesting episode just to go through 5 years of lessons, the biggest lesson I learned each year. And I think it'll be pretty interesting listening. So, in the first year of my training for hiking, when I first really got presented in the place of, actually training hikers, I'd been training everyone under the shape of the sun, prior to that. I've been training people for weight loss, for muscle gain, for general fitness, for marathons, for other sports performance, for sort of injury prevention or whatever it may be, a whole bunch of different just generalist things. But in the first year of actually training for hiking, the biggest lesson that I learned that year was people don't know what they're doing in the world of training for hiking. And this really fell into two big categories: the coaches, who said they didn't know what they were doing, and also just the general information out there. So I'll start with the coaches. So, I was working at this particular gym and, I sort of got into that environment. And, as I sort of said, at that stage, I hadn't been training hikers. And there was, certain coaches in this gym who had been training hikers for years. And naive as I was, I kind of assumed, look, if these people have been training hikers for years, they probably do know what they're doing. They're probably a bit smarter than me in this particular area. And they've probably got some really, really good methods. So the training that I delivered in the sort of first sort of months and, in that first year, was very, very similar to the other coaches because I looked at what they were doing. I was like, all right, that must make sense. That must have some good results. And I kind of emulated what they were doing. And after I did it for a few months, I was like, you know what, actually, this doesn't really make sense. Like, yeah, we're doing some okay things. And, what we were doing was just lots and lots and lots of sort of muscular endurance work, lots and lots and lots of sort of really burny stuff on the muscles, lots and lots of stuff where we're just stringing together workouts, which will get a nice burn, but, it kind of makes sense that it'd help them with elevation hiking. But, after a couple of months of that, after I found my feet, and I was like, you know what, actually, this doesn't really make much of that sense. Because this training, yeah, it works a particular type of fitness. Yeah, it can be beneficial for some people, but I was aware, look, there's so many other factors that go into this. Injury prevention, in regards to getting ready for long days on the trail, in regards to just, being able to deal with sort of long descents or whatever it may be. And so I kind of came to the realization that, all right, you know what, these coaches, they got their own way of doing things, but in all honesty, I think there can be much, much, much better ways. And then the next realization that sort of was a part of that was just the world of training for hiking in general. So once I sort of had that realization around, okay, what we're doing in this gym maybe not be the best thing in the world that hikers could be getting, that's when I sort of really put my head down, started doing a lot of research, do a lot of reading, really looking around and seeing what the other experts in the world were doing. And as I've said many times on the podcast before, oh my gosh, like that was an eye-opener where the quality of information around training for hiking at that stage around on the internet was horrendous. And you'd go online, you ask, how do I get fit for hiking? And you come up with all these articles written by people who, as a coach, was very, very obvious. Either they had no idea about like actual physical performance and they were just a hiker who was just, throwing some sort of general ideas around and just saying, hey, just do some squats, some lunges, just do some walking, maybe a couple of stretches and that'll be fine. Or it was coming from the other perspective where there was these, strength conditioning coaches or personal trainers who, maybe have trained one or two hikers and they're just putting all these ideas out there where, yeah, you can sort of see like, look, this kind of sounds good in theory, but in all honesty, in the reality of it, it's probably not going to be super relevant for a lot of hikers. So the quality information out there was just average. And that was a big realization of that year. Is like, look, people don't know what they're doing when it comes to training for hiking, both in the coaching realm, in the information realm. And that was obviously filtering down to the hikers themselves because, if they're getting bad information or bad advice, they probably didn't know what they were doing. So that was a big lesson. And that was kind of the inspiration of like, okay, this could be done better. And that was the inspiration behind Summit Strength. I was like, look, there's so much potential for change here. There's so many hikers that need help. And literally at the end of that first year, that's when I stepped out as under Summit Strength. And that's when I sort of began doing my own thing as a full-time job, helping hikers through my systems and my ideas. So that was lesson number one in the first year. People who didn't really know what they were doing. Now, the second year, when I was sort of first doing full-time training for hiking under my own brand, under Summit Strength, probably the biggest lesson that I learned was flexibility is better for hikers with their training. And not flexibility in the sense of flexibility around your muscls, but flexibility in the sense of flexibility around your training approach. And what I mean by that is, when I was first doing my own thing, I kind of went down this route where I was like coming up with these really, really, really almost perfect training programs for my hikers. And what would happen is like someone would come see me and they'd say, look, I'm training for Kilimanjaro. I have 16 weeks to prepare. And I was like, boom, awesome, let's do this. And I would sit down and I would write up this amazing program over these 16 weeks that sort of went through this really, really nice progression, this really, really nice flow that had sort of the milestones, laid out saying that this week we want to be able to do this week we want to be able to do this. And I had this pitch up perfect program, which if we executed it, I would have 100% no doubt they will get them in a fantastic position for their trips. And I used to do this with all my clients and come up with these amazing things to my eyes. And I was like, boom, this is going to be awesome. But the big learning lesson on that year was things never go smoothly. Things always come up. So, people would get sick and that would throw my whole plan out the window. Or people would have to go on holidays. Or maybe people would have a busy week and they couldn't actually get out hiking. Or maybe there was just a change in weather and, all of a sudden we had torrential rain and they didn't want to get out hiking in the rain or whatever it may be. And one of these a million things that always comes up, that was obviously getting in the way of the programs. So I'd had this absolutely perfect program, but then I kind of sort of realized, look, I've got to be thinking on my feet here. And we were constantly adjusting and changing and this and that. And then sort of through that year, I was like, you know what? In all honesty, these perfect programs, they're kind of worthless because I think 1 in 10 of them were actually completing from the start to the finish without, adjustments. And I was like, in all honesty, this is just a bit backwards. I'm constantly changing and changing and changing. I honestly think we should be a bit more flexible in this approach. And as opposed to me sort of looking 4 months in advance and just assuming things are going to be perfect, let's keep it a little bit more short term. Let's sort of say, okay, at certain points, yeah, we do want to hit certain milestones. At certain things, we do want to get you at certain positions. But we'll keep it a little bit more flexible because things always come up. If you get sick, then we can work around that. If you have to go on holidays, we can work around that. If you're going to ache or pain creeps up, we can work around that. And that was the big learning in that lesson. It's just flexibility is much better because there were so many perfect, in quotation mark, training programs, but they just weren't worth the time I spent on them because they just didn't play out. And that's turned into a really, really big philosophy around the coaching that I provide for my hikers and that I advocate for my hikers is we want to keep things flexible. We want to keep things adaptable and we want to work around whatever does come up in your life and keep you moving forward, even if, the perfect situation doesn't arise. So that was my lesson in year number 2. Flexibility is probably better. Now, in year number 3, the big thing that I learned here was that hikers in pain needed more help than they were currently getting. And what I mean by that was, when I wasn't really focusing on online personal training for hiking. When I was mainly just doing face-to-face, so I was working in a gym in the city of Sydney, I was working with hikers there. I did a couple of people online, but the majority of the stuff was face-to-face. And in that situation, I had a nice little network of professionals around. So I would handle the training side of things. And then if someone did have like an ache or pain and injury, I had a really, really good network of professionals around that I could refer out to. I had a physiotherapist that we worked closely with. So, they would go and get treatment, but we'd also go back and forth quite a bit and discuss things and help each other and program together. We had sort of people who were doing like podiatrists, same thing. We had, massage therapists, which isn't really your first point of call for injury or pain, but it was a nice place to refer to. We had this nice network in the city of people that I could refer out to. But as that sort of shifted, and as we got into, obviously the world of COVID and, then face-to-face closed down and really started focusing on the online stuff much, much, much more, in that situation, I realized, oh my gosh, I am lucky in this environment because I have professionals that I trust that I could refer out to, that I could work closely with. But in all honesty, the majority of the hikers that I'm talking to are dealing with pain. And I'm like, okay, go see a physio or see a physical therapist. They just weren't getting the help they needed. And they were getting this useless advice like at least 50% of the time. And, physios will be like, okay, you're in pain, just stop hiking. And for a hiker who has a trip coming up in 2 months' time, that's not an option. Or people will be just getting these like really, really generic exercises and they'll be going to just do clams and do squats and do wall sits every single day. But again, for a hiker that has to sort of hike multiple hours, and they may not be doing a big trip, but then maybe they're just doing, 5, 6, 7 hours on a day hike. That's not really going to get them there. And there was all these things we're running into. So I kind of came to the realization that, look, hikers in pain, they really do need more help. They need more support than probably in the traditional rehab model. Because I was kind of working in an operation where I had kind of my blinkers on. I was sort of in the best case scenario, but it's just obviously not relevant for a lot of people. So that's when we started developing our training systems for hikers with pain. And obviously we don't try to fill the role of a physio or physical therapist, and we still don't do that. But we realized, look, there's so much we can do for hikers in pain to help them. We can develop training which will specifically help build off what physios typically give and help fill that gap between that early stages of just acute pain and actually getting you ready for the trail. We can build out our education resources and our strategies so to teach our hikers how to manage things like knee pain, foot pain, shin pain, or whatever it may be. And that year was really, really dedicated to developing those systems and those ideas. So when hikers were running into issues or they were coming to us and saying, look, I like to hike, but my knee pain always holds me back, we had systems, we had ideas, we had supports which would help them through that. And then if they really needed that, hands-on approach from a physio or physical therapist, we could still refer them out, but we would be confident that we could fill the gaps from that, even if they may not get amazing advice. So that was a lesson in year number 3. Hikers in pain just needed more help than they were getting. Now, in year number 4, the big lesson that kind of shaped the change of Summit Strength was specialists are worth their weight in gold. Now, I've always considered myself, through these years of specializing in training for hiking, I've considered myself a specialist when it comes to training and physical preparation for hiking, because that's literally what I do as my full-time job. I really, really, really feel confident that I have a much, 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 much deeper understanding than the majority of the world of coaching out there in regards to training for hiking. And that's something that I am a specialist in. However, there are a lot of other things that sort of go into the world of preparation for hiking, into the world of sort of feeling good on your adventures. That's not specifically training related. So other things that typically go into this are things like nutrition. Now, obviously, nutrition plays a big, big role in our physical performance. And as much as I have certain education, certain qualifications, certain competencies in doing coaching nutrition, and I was doing that myself and I was helping my hikers, I knew in the back of my head, look, I'm probably better than a lot of people with this. And I'm definitely giving good advice, but I'm not a specialist. I don't have that same depth of knowledge that I have around the training. And I really thought, look, there's an opportunity here that I can actually get a specialist involved, that I can actually, focus on what I do really good myself, the training, and I can actually get some specialist knowledge for nutrition for hikers. So that's when we started working quite closely with Kyle from Valley to Peak Nutrition, who is a dietitian who specializes in hikers. So we started including dietitian consults with him for our hikers with our packages, so they could get that deeper one-to-one knowledge. We started doing Q&As where Kyle would come into the group and do group Q&A live sessions with our clients, so they could answer those things. And we started working closely there. And there was other things that sort of came up. When it comes to gear, that's another big thing, which for myself, I've said a million times, I'm not an expert in gear. I wouldn't consider myself very knowledgeable at all in gear. And I gave certain recommendations for my hikers around things that I feel like really helped. Things like poles and compression recovery tights and stuff like that. But obviously, hikers love to talk about gear. And obviously, there's a lot of things that can go into your boots and your sleep systems and your packs and all of that. So I was like, you know what? One of the coaches we were working with at the time, Josh, he was not just a really, really experienced coach, but he was also, a guide. He was also a real specialist in the technical side of hiking. So we got him involved doing some Q&As purely around gear, because it was an area of knowledge that I wasn't competent in, I wasn't a specialist in, but he was. So we started doing fortnightly Q&As with our hikers around that, where people can sort of talk about gear-related issues, get that specialist advice, and really dive into that. And that year was really the year of just trying to source a whole bunch of different specialists to help with these different things. Now, we did sort of try a lot of different places, and it was a bit difficult finding specialists who wanted to help us. We went down the route of talking to mental strength for endurance performance and try to get a specialist to do some recurring lectures for them. That fell through. We tried to reach out to a breathing specialist who specialized in breathing time strategies for sports performance, and that fell through. We tried to reach out to a high performance psychologist who dealt with psychology in high performance situations. That fell through. And there are a lot of things that did fall through, unfortunately, which is a bit frustrating. But it was a big eye-opener in that year that we built out a lot of these specialist areas of knowledge, and that is something that we put a bit of focus into for Summit Strength. And then probably the lesson for this year, for the 5th year of training hikers, probably the biggest lesson that I've kind of learned here is that a simple change in mindset can make all the difference. Now, I know, through my coaching career, I've always known that mindset, that, certain mental strategies can make a dramatic difference. And, I used to talk about it a lot in my early days of coaching. And it always has been a certain element that we talk about when it comes to the training for hiking. It's always been something that we've used, when people are running into issues. But this year's really, really honed in on just how important this is. And just how important just a simple change, the smallest change in perspective, can make a dramatic difference. And we've seen a lot of hikers this year, just in sort of our trainings, both with, people we work with closely and people that we worked with so closely, that, people have ran into a lot of major issues this year. And they always do, but we're talking about this year, and they've run into a lot of major issues. Whether it's like major accidents, whether it's major illnesses, maybe there's long-term stuff from COVID, whether it's family issues or whatever it may be. That stuff's always going on in the background, but there has been a lot of that this year. And we've just seen again and again and again, just like, a lot of hikers can really, really get down on themselves during these times, which is fair enough. Things come up, things get in the way, or whatever it may be, and it really gets in the way of their, momentum with their training, their sort of motivation, and also their mindset. And we've really sort of found this year that sometimes just the smallest change in outlook during these things, it can make just such a dramatic difference. It can just absolutely snowball. So, for example, things like reframing certain things. And, when we catch ourselves in a negative mindset and kind of constantly repeating these certain things, which we'll sometimes see as a coach where, a hiker may repeat these certain phrases in their check-ins or to their messages. And sometimes we found if we can just rephrase those, you can still say, you still talk about the same issue or talk about whatever it may be, but just reframing it in a positive way. We've seen just such a dramatic difference that can make. Or when people kind of looking at this whole all or nothing mindset around their training, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm super busy. I can't fit in my sessions. I'm just going to do nothing. Just putting a really big emphasis into, okay, if you can't fit things in, let's just fit 5 minutes in. That's all you got to do. That's the reset expectations, and that's the change. And then you do it, you're done, you're happy, see you later. And that one simple change in perspective is saying, I don't have to fit a whole 60-minute session in, but I'll fit a 5-minute session in. It's just seen dramatic difference. And we've been doing this stuff for years, but this year's really, really hammered home. And and because of that, I spent quite a bit of time recently, updating all our sort of mindset and our mental strength education materials that we give to our clients. Because I really just, it's been highlighted again and again and again, just what a difference this can make. So that's been a big focus of this year so far. So there we go. In all honesty, 5 years of training for hikers, 5 big lessons and 5 sort of things that have really shaped the way that we do things these days. Now, I know some of that knowledge is probably, just information. It's just a story. Some of that you may be able to put into action for yourself, here and there. But, I just thought it would be quite interesting to reflect back on kind of what we've been doing over the last 5 years, how it's been changing, how this has been evolving. And if you've been listening to this podcast for the last how many years I've been talking about it, you've probably noticed there's been a change in tone and change in things I talk about. Sometimes the phrasing's a little bit different. Sometimes the recommendation's a little bit different. Because as a coach, we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always changing. So, and also I did want to record this episode because I thought it'd be quite interesting in 5 years' time when we hit that 10-year mark of training for hikers to reflect back on this and see, okay, these are the changes that happened the first 5 years. What are the next changes in the next 5 years and the next, because this isn't a short-term thing. Summit strength is going to be around for a long time. And this is kind of a little thing for me to sort of look back and be like, you know what, this will be interesting. So all in all, I think that'll probably do it for this episode. Hopefully this has been interesting for you. Hopefully it maybe has cleared a few insights and, just been an interesting listen for a few people here. Now, if you were interested, obviously, in sort of getting involved or learning a little bit more about the training that we do provide for hikers, that sort of, that all of these years worth of lessons have sort of filtered down into the programs that we develop for our hikers to get them essentially, fit, strong, resilient, or whatever it may be for their adventures. If you do want to learn a little bit more, you can check out a little bit more about our training programs at summitstrength.com.au/online. And on there, we've got a nice long video that talks in depth around exactly how we go about training our hikers. We have a bunch of testimonials, a bunch of reviews, a bunch of information, and also it gives you an opportunity to reach out if you are interested in just learning a little bit more. So if you did want to find out a little bit more about our training, go to summitstrength.com.au/online and you can check it all out there. So thank you so much for listening today. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got a bit out of it, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye.